Well, hello and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. This is a really good one. You guys are actually going to love it. I'm interviewing Serena Dyer Pisoni, who is Wayne Dyer's daughter, and she wrote a book with her sister Saje. And I love this book. It's called The Knowing, 11 Lessons to Understand the Quiet Urges of Your Soul. And Wayne Dyer, if you don't know his work, I can't imagine that you don't, but maybe you don't. He was a huge influence on my life and my work for many, many years. And I met him when I started working with Hay House, and then I met him on this crew. Like there was all these different ways that he kept coming into my life, but was so supportive of my work. It was just so lovely. And his work was so impactful on my life. Actually, I was reading his books when I was a teenager. My mother had them. So if you don't know Wayne Dyer's work, I would say go out and look at it. He passed away a couple of years ago. And basically, this book is about what they learned personally through that process. But then they created tools and strategies. So there's ways that we can also get through really hard times. And she shares, when Serena and I were talking, she shares about, the series of losses that she had in a row, and how for a long time she just beat herself up about the losses. And what happened? How did she then move into more self-forgiveness and self-love? It was a very moving interview. I hope that you enjoy this interview with Serena Dyer Pisoni as much as I enjoyed interviewing my pal. Well, hello and welcome to the show, Serena. I'm so excited. I'm sitting here holding your beautiful book. So how are you?
I'm happy that we are on together now, and I'm happy that I got to this place of being on with you now because as you know, I have been a little chaotic, but I'm
We've
good
been trying.
now. Yes.
We've been trying, but
Yeah.
we're here now. So let's talk about, I love, love, love your book. So you co-authored this book with your sister Sage, and I want to know what inspired the book. So, and tell us about the book first. Tell us what the book's about, and then tell us what inspired
Sure. So the book is really it begins with Sage and I. The first chapter is really just kind of based on our dad dying and what a shock that was, and kind of just that experience of going through that shocking loss. And then really we just go through our personal journeys separately, but also at times together of trying to understand and I would say navigate so much of what he spent his life teaching, but
it.
really actually needing the work for the first or the message or the lessons for the first time in both of our adult lives without him being here to assist or fix everything that we were kind of going through along the way. And so really it's just an exploration of like a is what he lived and taught, is it real? Meaning, can we still connect with him now that he's on the other side? Because
Yeah.
you know that he often said that we are just having a human experience and the soul goes on. So, could we make that connection? Could we discover him and feel him and still continue that journey of learning from him and all of our loved ones now that he was gone? But also, for me personally, and this is really what the book is about on my end, but Sage's as well, I didn't just lose my dad. I had, in a really short period of time, my life went from sort of really seamless and easy for the majority of it to having um, become a mother for the first time, a stepmother to a teenager, my husband arrested, indicted, all of our finances lost, then my father passing away, battling depression and anxiety, my husband going on trial for his livelihood and his freedom. And then during all of that time, again, just dealing with the fear and anxiety, and then suddenly and unexpectedly losing my teenage stepson. And all of that took place in a very short period of time. And really, what I wanted was my dad to kind of step in and tell me it would be okay and fix it. And the book is really about uncovering that I didn't need him here to do that. And I could do it, even if I didn't want to, even if it meant I was kicking and screaming along the way and, trying to find hope and love and optimism time and time again, and faith, and failing time and time again, but ultimately discovering that all along his message and his life's work was true, because I knew that in order for me to find the peace that I was seeking, I knew that I had to go within. But I was really convincing myself that when all of the pieces in my life fell into place, then I could have peace. Even though I was raised to know that I actually had to have peace, and then all the pieces of my life would fall into place. And it's really kind of just like an exploration of long answer, sorry, of applying
Love it.
all of that and having to kind of learn all of that.
So that was the long way around the barn, but I loved it. So never apologize for a long answer of what you needed to get to. And the thing that I want to pull out of that is this, because it's so common that we feel like when I get to this place, when I get to peace, then everything in my life is going to fall into place. And what you said so succinctly was when I'm going to get peace first, right? Because everything in my life is out of control because I'm trying to control it rather than deal with what's happening internally. So would you, Serena, tell me a little bit about, because you went through, I know you at this, as you were going through all of these things, I mean, you went through it like so many things back to back and like devastating losses. And I know from your social media stuff and the stuff that you do that you have a belief about what's next, right? About what's after this. And I know your dad did as well. So what is your connection to your dad now?
My connection to my dad now is one where I am no longer in any stage of sadness or grief in terms of him not being here in the physical sense. I did go through that, and it did take a very long time. But now I feel as though, A, I understand why it had to be the way that it was. But B, I feel his presence in a way that is lighter, much, much lighter. Because, for a lot of people that followed his work, he was a very great, positive speaker and writer, but he was still a human being that struggled with his own, massive struggles at times. And being his daughter and his family member, I always knew about what those were. And so it's not that he was ever heavy or dark at all, but when you love somebody and they're here in the physical way, when they're going through anything, good or bad, you feel that with them, right? Now I feel him as only lightness. I actually feel him as almost like he's giddy, that he is loving getting to mess with our airwaves during recordings and just be with anybody that is wanting him to be with them. Or and I think that's not just because he is Wayne Dyer. I think that's everybody that is on the other side, that they can be with us in an instant because they are not bound by the physical. And I think that there is an enormous lightness that he must be experiencing, and I feel that with him and for him. And I genuinely mean it when I say I look forward to the day that I see him, feel him, not in just the spirit form when I join him in the spirit world, but I'm not in a hurry to be there. I'm not in a hurry to see him.
Right. Because you feel him.
Yeah, I do. And I mean, I've had so many incredible signs and incredible experiences, but I think the one that really kind of convinced me, so many convinced me, but the one that really stands out to me is after he died, and I would say it was maybe a year after he died, and I was in the process of writing, not with any intention to create a book, just thinking I needed to get this out.
Right.
And I had this sudden kind of calling or urging to go back and look. You can search in your email inbox for somebody's name or email address. And I had done that after he died. I wanted to like read everything we had ever emailed, and I wanted to savor all of that. But this was like a year later, and I just felt something saying to me that I needed to go back and do that again. And this is like 1 a.m. And I got up and I did. And I discovered, which I did not discover the first time, I discovered an email chain between him and a friend that I had been CC'd on. And in that email chain, he wrote to his friend about how Rumi describes that there's a ladder that's placed before each of us at our birth. And we climb up the ladder, and the final rung is just divine love. And that we don't have to die to get there, but that often we do. And he wrote this to his friend. And he said in that email that he felt that he was on the final rung. And from that point forward, he was ready for whatever came. And he was ready to just be in that space of loving everyone and anyone without judgment. And I don't know, I guess that's kind of how I feel him now. And I feel as though discovering that he was ready to kind of be on that last rung and take whatever came next. I think it just gave me a sense of a similar feeling that we don't have to die to be in that space. And if there's ever a goal to have, it's to get there while still here.
That is beautiful. All right. So he was on, the visualization of transitioning, but knowing in a way that you're ready. There's such a beautiful, I had such a beautiful like image when you were talking about it of not fearing, because I think that many of us are trained and we're raised to fear what's next. And, we have organized religion telling us that terrible things are next. And then you have people telling you that nothing's next. And, everyone has a right to what they believe. But, and I know Christina Rasmussen as well, right?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I've been on her show a bunch of times. She's been on my show. And she talks so much about how to stay in contact with loved ones who have transitioned. And that's what her second book is about. And I just find it really fascinating as a conversation, because everyone has their own way of looking at it. And I feel like when my father passed also very suddenly, I wanted to feel him around me. I wanted something. And I had this really interesting experience that a year after my father passed away, and the whole time I would think about him, and I would get upset because I was worried that maybe in the end of his life he was afraid, he wished he had gone to the hospital sooner. Nobody even said that. I just made that up, right? Mm-hmm. But it was painful. It would like stab me every time I thought of it. I was like, oh my God, I hope he wasn't afraid. So about a year after, 2 years, 3 years, so now it's 4 years after my father's passing, and one of my friends calls me and leaves a message and says, hey, I went to a psychic and your father came. And I was like, what? And she's, literally not someone who you would think would go to a psychic. She's a lawyer. I call her back. I go, what are you doing going to a psychic? Because it's not really her trip. And she said, I thought he was a medium. And so I didn't even know he was a psychic. And I go, well, what are you talking about? What happened? And she said, I walked in the door and he said, who do you know named Terri? Wow. And she was like, oh, my neighbor. My kids call her Grandma Terri. No, same age as you. She's like, oh, my best friend from college, Terri Cole. He's like, that's her. Her dad is here and wants to know if you will give her a message. Wow. And she was like, oh, okay. Like she did literally no experience. And the first thing he said is, tell her I wasn't afraid.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God. And I never told anyone, Serena. I never told my boyfriend who became my husband. I never told my sisters. I have 3 older sisters. I never told my mother, because I was like, it's such a painful thought. Why am I going to burden them with it? But that really impacted me, where I was like, what I think is happening is happening.
Right. Well, and your father knew that you needed to be given that peace, which is just such proof that they're still with us and feeling our energy. And I know that to be true. And you know that to be true.
Yeah.
I
The
hope
piece
everybody
that,
gets that.
oh, me too. But the piece that came with just, there was the release
Mm-hmm.
of not worrying and being
Right.
like, he's moved on and it's okay. But I also still do feel him around me. And what I love about the book that you guys have, so it's basically 11 lessons to understand and quiet urges of your soul, is that you've really made this your own. So it's like there's a lot of principles because, listen, your father, of course, was extremely influential in my life. I knew him for many years at Hay House. Like, I loved your dad, and knew his work long before I was privileged enough to even meet him. But you really have made this your own because you've applied it to your own experiences. So tell us a little bit, if you would just choose a few of the lessons to share with us, would you?
Yeah, sure. And let me just say that part of the uncovering for me of some of these lessons really did come from kind of how you were saying about your dad. You carried this fear, this painful fear that he was somehow not at peace. I did not have that relating to my dad because I knew that he was, on the final rung, and not that he was close to death, but I knew he was kind of like always talking about how he was looking forward to the next phase. But when I lost my stepson, I did not in any way feel that level of peace or understanding or acceptance. And so much of the writing of this book and the lessons that came to be, just about embracing silence and about having to have forgiveness for yourself first. And all of those things are things that I grew up hearing and logically understood, but they were never a challenge for me until my stepson died and I was overcome with the feeling of guilt and shame, not because I caused his death, but because during his life, there were times where I was not good to him, and I knew it at the time, and I still chose to do it, be mean or cause a fight or alienate him or judge him, or try to get between him and his dad, who's now my husband. I did those things even though I knew not to. And the guilt after he died and the shame was so profound that I felt that I was not worthy of any of the good things that were in my life or that were happening. And I really felt, which really applies to my dad's teachings, I really felt as though I was raised to believe that you get in life what you are, not what you want. And therefore, all of these bad things that are happening to me in a row are because I am bad and I don't deserve better. And so many of the lessons that are in this book are about the process of discovering for myself, because it didn't matter that my dad said it and spoke about it and raised me on it. It didn't matter that I had phenomenal parents. I could not offer that forgiveness to myself. I was committed to my own shame, to my own guilt, and I viewed everything that was taking place in my life as bad and therefore my fault, and therefore I was attracting it. And it was not until I want to say really started to do the work of just trying to imagine a inner Tahiti, a place of peace, just trying to imagine the feeling of the wish fulfilled, all these things that my dad talked about. And it took me years to even begin to feel worthy of starting. But it wasn't until I started to contemplate that idea that I really came to discover that none of these things that happened were bad or good. They were opportunities for growth if I chose to view them that way. Or they were reasons to stay stuck, guilty, shameful, if I chose to view them that way. And so, for example, one of the lessons that we wrote about was one of my dad's most favorite lines that people often know him by: if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I really thought I got that. I understood that when he was alive. It was a clever play on words, and I got it. No, I did not get it. I did not get it until I had to stop judging everything that took place in my life and putting it in the category as bad and start choosing to view it, everything, even the death of my stepson, as, I don't know, things that I signed up for before I incarnated and were really rungs on my own ladder, if I chose to see them that way. And I know that you know about this, and I think the biggest sticking point for even choosing to see things from love instead of fear is feeling worthy. And I didn't for so long. And anyway, so that's really what the book is kind of about, is just like, doesn't matter that you had Wayne Dyer as a dad, and it doesn't matter that you had great spiritual parents, or if your parents were assholes. The truth is, it's really up to you. And you know that, and I know that you talk about that, and I know that that is what your work has been, is about discovering one's self and taking responsibility for that. But, it's harder to do when shit hits the fan. And it's really easy to think you got it when you're Wayne Dyer's kid and nothing bad has ever happened.
Yeah, so. It's so true, like how it puts the metal to the test in a way where you're now in it. But the fact that you found your way through, and in the book you talk about the geometry of forgiveness, right? Change your life and the lives around you with a simple prayer. But it sounds to me like you, in finding the forgiveness for yourself, because that is the most profound prison I would see my therapy clients in, just not being able to let go, either the mistakes they made, thinking about, especially if someone passes away and they feel like they didn't get a chance to make amends about something, or they wish they had done something differently, that it's like we think it's going to make it better by beating the crap out of ourselves, by, just continually being like, well, you deserve all these bad things because you're a friggin' idiot. And what ends up happening is it becomes this, like you said, everything now gets painted with this brush of badness. And I think that shifting your mind, it is so powerful. What you said about your dad's quote, and I have to say, my mother had that on her friggin' refrigerator for like my entire growing up, I think. I swear to God. Because it's so true. And yet it is so powerful. Yet what you're sharing, Serena, and it's true, that living that truth is much harder than intellectually understanding that truth.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that I don't even know if I've ever heard of a lack of self-forgiveness as like a prison. But like how you just said, it's really like a prison, but it is exactly that. And I could not agree more, because it is a self-imposed stuckness. And so often I think we would rather stay in our own prison because we think that's where we ought to be, or that's what we deserve, when really everybody on the other side, and everybody, that is I don't know, just part of like this God consciousness, including my stepson, would only want to send love and forgiveness. But they couldn't send that to me, and my dad couldn't teach that to me, and they couldn't fix that to me if I wasn't willing to hear it. And I was not willing to hear it for a long time. And it was really through the process of, writing a lot of this, that I realized that I just didn't have to carry that anymore. I could set it down, and I wasn't letting myself or anybody off the hook, because there was no hook in the first place. And I just didn't get that until I started to kind of, I don't know, just think about that idea of being on the final rung and what that rung would be like to just have divine love and wanting that and not wanting to have to die to have that and wanting to teach that and offer that and be that for my children and teach that to my children. I mean, and I just kind of realized over and over again until it really just kind of hit me in the face that if there was ever an opportunity to start with wanting or acquiring divine love, I had to start with myself. And it sounds so cliche, but
I gotta
that's the
say,
story.
it doesn't though. You know, Serena, truthfully, to me, I always say, you know, like the only path, right? Self love is the only path to any other healthy love, right? Or the only path to true love. But again, that is a nice notion.
Right.
But what you're talking about is that self love and self forgiveness it's a lifestyle, it's actions, it's daily choices, it's how we perceive ourselves. It is, do we believe that we are worthy, you know, of divine love and all of those things. I really, really love this book, you guys. So do tell people where they can get the book and what else you're lit up about. And then I want to ask you some questions about boundaries quick.
Yes. So the book's on all the major like bookstores. I love brick and mortar stores, so I'm going to put those out there first. Mom and pop shops, the big chain ones, but also Amazon and Audible. Saje and I recorded it ourselves, and funny enough, she was like super pregnant at the time. And so many people have commented like somebody was breathy during that recording. And I always want to write back like, excuse me, that's my younger sister. And she was really pregnant sitting in a tiny booth in a basement in New York. So anyway, Saje thinks that they're talking about me as breathy because we don't say this is Serena each time we read, right? I'm like, Saje, it was definitely you. But anyway, so it's on Audible as well. I I don't really know what is next for me, but I do know that I'm still like kind of just dancing with this self-love and this self-forgiveness. I am not all the way there. I am still flirting with it. Sometimes I'm really marinating in it, and sometimes I'm terrified of it. And I'm just allowing that now. I'm finally not judging myself for being stuck at times. And that's all I plan to do, honestly, is just to continue to just allow myself. Because I was hard on myself for a long time, and I don't want to do that anymore.
No, because again, like you said, you got all these kids, you got all these people that you're modeling behavior for, and you want them to have what you're creating. And I agree with mental health in general is an ongoing process. It's a discipline. I don't feel like most of the time we ever like get there, right? We just keep practicing the healthy things. We just keep meditating. We just keep talking. We just keep going back to do it again. So you guys go out and get this book, The Knowing, 11 Lessons to Understand the Quiet Urges of Your Soul by Saje and Serena Dyer. See it? It's beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much, my friend, for coming on. I super duper appreciate you. You guys, all the links you need to find these ladies will be in the show notes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you again.
Thank you.